Anyone who knows me knows. No, wait. I've done that intro before. Okay, who cares? Let's make this a thing. Anyone who knows me knows I love Spider-Man. He's my favorite, not just superhero, but fictional character, period. I have an embarrassing amount of Spider-Man merch, but we're not going to get into that today. Needless to say, when I saw the announcement for Spider-Man PS4 at my old job in 2016, I almost took the rest of the day off to celebrate. I was that excited and equally distracted. Everyone and their mother was asking me if I've seen it because I'm very vocal about the things I love, and like I said before, Spidey is my guy. So fast forward 2 years and I bought the game on day 1 of release. I did not pre-order it because I don't believe in pre-orders and I don't think you should either. But let me say 3 things. Firstly, this is not a gameplay or technology review. People far more capable than me have done those. But I'll say that I enjoyed it for the most part, and on random sunny Saturday mornings, I'll still throw it on and swing around the city. Because it's fun and it combines 3 of my favorite things: sun, Saturday, and Spider-Man. Secondly, I hate what they did to Peter Parker's design in the remastered version. But given that the sequel is on the way, we might as well get used to it. That means I'll be using visuals from the PS5 version. Thirdly and finally, I'll also go into the DLC once we get to the end of the base game, so whether you played it or not, I got you covered. All that said, this is purely a story review from someone who loves single-player games, Spider-Man, and the whole concept of telling stories. I was torn on how to approach this, so I thought I'd lean towards chronology and comment on what I liked and what I didn't like as we go. But we're obviously not going shot for shot because
ain't nobody got time for that.
So let's all take a trip down memory lane together, shall we? I loved the opening of the game. It was a perfect introduction to Peter as that guy who is barely in control of his life and his bills. For anyone who isn't familiar with Spider-Man, you'd immediately understand what his living situation is. And on that note, I like a lot of superheroes, but the thing I love most about Spider-Man is his secret identity. Everything about who Peter Parker is as a character just speaks to me, and has for a really long time. I can't think of a better, faster way to get everyone caught up on his life than that opening, and it visually summarizes quite a lot of stuff. Freeze frames are your friends here if you want to catch all the Easter eggs. We then get into the Wilson Fisk of it all. We all know this iconic rivalry, but for those who don't, you can tell that there's major history between the two of them. At the time, it shocked me that he was the opening boss, but it made me think that if this was the case, we were definitely in for an epic ride.
So, should we kiss now? Finally off to Rikers, huh? You know, I think you've got more enemies in there than I do.
If you think this will be more than a minor inconvenience...
Whoop, gotta go. Hey, good luck, Willie. I have a feeling you're gonna need it.
We then get introduced to the work side of Peter's life. Man, I hate that face. Jeez. I hope I'll eventually get used to it. But anyway, they instantly nailed the father-son dynamic that Peter and Otto had, and how he was willing to take the fall for Otto so that his funding prospects would not be sabotaged by such a small mishap.
It was all my fault.
The energy levels.
This relationship will be an issue for me later, but we'll get there. From that scene, we meet Yuri Watanabe, another excellent introduction and a perfect execution of a prior relationship that feels really organic. She's basically Spider-Man's Commissioner Gordon, but their relationship was really awesome. Spider-Cop was one of the best things to have come out of this game for me.
From his elevated position, Spider-Cop spies his destination. A second surveillance tower.
Are you narrating yourself?
What? No, of course not. The Chief never did understand Spider-Cop. Thought he was a loose cannon.
I laughed out loud every time, man. Props to Yuri Lowenthal for his voice work. Unfortunately, this relationship, like Otto Octavius, will sour for me later, but for different reasons. Let's keep going. We checked back in with Otto and Peter's relationship, and when he discovered Peter's spider suit, I thought there was no way he thinks Peter just designs stuff for Spider-Man. He's way too smart for that. Spoiler alert, I was right. But as much as I hate this aspect of Spidey's history, where in various incarnations, one of his villains will usually discover his secret identity, it's really core to his personal connections to them, and I like what came out of it in this game. It gave rise to one of my favorite new suit designs ever. I'm that guy who played through the whole game multiple times with the base suit. I mean, thanks for all the options, I guess, but...
Don't need it!
I've always loved Spidey's suit, and like I said, I have an embarrassing amount of proof in the way of merch, but this new one made the OG suit look so bland to me, which is a sentence I never thought I'd say. I'm also aware that that's not a popular opinion, so don't come for me. I come in peace. So now we get into what I thought this game was really about. We'll meet another personal connection of Peter, who will later turn out to be a villain in Martin Lee. Insomniac just gave up hiding that twist during the trailer run. I've really not had any exposure to Mr. Negative, and I thought, finally, we're giving a shot to a lesser-known Spidey villain. As someone who has been inundated in Spidey content over the last 25 years, I really wanted a break from the regulars, or a fresh take at least. I think we're starting to get into my main issues with the story of this game, but let's continue. We get introduced to MJ doing that Lois Lane thing that I really hate. It's a personal pet peeve for me when characters put themselves in situations that they have no business getting into. In this situation, it's obviously an empowerment trope that I really hate in modern entertainment. Being capable is very different from being reckless and arrogant about your recklessness, and I hate when they keep writing civilians like this. What this ends up doing is making Spider-Man look like a douche when he tells her to stop risking her life. Then she hits the guy over the head so that we can think she can handle herself. That's just so lazy, man, come on. You can write a better scene than that.
You're lucky to be alive.
Says the guy I saved 5 minutes ago.
And that's why you got bonked on the head. But anyway, 90s Lois Lane is really not the template, people. Let's stop doing this. Anyway. We then go into some of my favorite stuff in the game because I'm that guy who watched the X-Men animated series for the soap opera elements. The Peter-MJ relationship stuff. I've always felt like Peter is like my brother and all I've ever wanted for him is to find happiness. Man, that face is not working for me. Anyway, I thought the writing here was so good and very relatable and also gets us properly introduced to what's really going on between them. Right before he ditches her to chase police sirens. This whole scene also felt reminiscent of the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man films, which hold one of the most special places in my heart. Then there's that cameo that hits so differently now. Rest in peace, Stan Lee, and thanks for everything you did to push comic books into the mainstream and make them cool. I discovered Spider-Man through your newspaper strips, and my childhood was infinitely better for it. So, for PlayStation 1 nostalgia reasons, I love Shocker. It was so nice to see him again after all these years, and I've always just liked the design of his suit and how Spidey doesn't take him too seriously because he's a lower level thug.
You have like zero personality, but your suit is awesome. Can we talk design details?
Oh, even Spider-Man agrees with me. I did not remember that he said that. So cool that we think alike. Anyway, this little interaction was one of the many high points in the story for me. It sounds silly when I say it out loud, but I'm very big on those small moments. So we get more Martin Lee stuff, which I'll skip over, but I really enjoyed it. It's the beginning of the reveal that maybe he isn't the sweet, honorable man that he portrays himself to be. As the pendulum seems to be swinging from this point, enter Norman Osborn as mayor, to ignite his usual intellectual rivalry with Otto. It's not a fresh take, but it's always welcome. We also find out that someone was obviously pulling Shocker's strings, revealing that there's a puppet master working behind the scenes. They try to telegraph everything from this point onwards like it was Martin Lee's doing, but we all know that was a
red herring.
I always love crime family drama, so the war on Fisk's territory was right up my alley. A tough war between Martin Lee's demons and Fisk's men was all I could ever ask for, and I was getting it. Every version of superhero stories where the hero has been caught between two warring gangs has been my favorite thing. Whether it's Punisher, Daredevil, or Spider-Man, sign me up. This is also foreshadowing cause I'm trying to telegraph where I'm going with my overall critique of the game. So we meet not Idris Elba, who was a really dope other ally for Spider-Man, but now that makes two allies on the police force. For anyone who is familiar with Officer Jean DeWolf, my Spidey sense was tingling at this point. Jean is a cop in Spider-Man lore, and I was introduced to her in the Ultimate Spider-Man comic. For those who are unfamiliar, she was working with Spider-Man in the same way that Yuri Watanabe was in this game, but it turned out that she was a corrupt cop secretly working for the Kingpin the whole time. So it turns out not Idris Elba wasn't a corrupt cop plot twist after all. He was something much worse. He was the introduction of Miles Morales to the game. Okay, so here is where I know I'm going to lose a few people, but let me state my case before you decide to go. I come to media and entertainment for escapism, which has always been the point and why Spider-Man is still a young adult after 60 years in print. I love stories about my favorite characters who do not grow old or die. Ultimate Spider-Man was my favorite comic book of the 2000s. That's the second comic book run that I felt was made specifically for me. Interestingly enough, the other comic book run was also done by the same writer, but anyway. Ultimate Spider-Man was my companion through some really low lows, and I loved that book with every fiber of my youth. Until Brian Michael Bendis decided to kill Spider-Man. This is something I'll just never understand as a consumer, and we're in Game of Thrones Season 8 territory here. Why would you build up a character over such a long period of time and have everyone form such an attachment to them, only to destroy them in the end, and in this case replace them with a less interesting version? And worse than that, have nothing to say with the new character after that. You put a lid on an amazing series with that. Seriously. I trashed all my Ultimate Spider-Man comics after that and moved on. The obvious critique I expect to get, because this is the internet, is that Miles looks more like me than Peter does, but that has nothing to do with how I connect with fictional characters. I don't like Miles as a character or a concept because I hate race swaps, I hate mantle passing, I hate duplicates of characters, and if you're sensitive to that, I have to warn you that there'll be more critique to come later. I don't want to waste your time if that will be a problem for you. The only grace I'll give you is that Into the Spider-Verse was the first time I saw Miles Morales distinguish himself from Peter in a meaningful way and act like his own person. Otherwise, he's usually just Peter Darker, as I've had people on the internet calling him. But back to the game and a classic moment in Peter's life where he gets evicted, and in this version of events, he has to sleep on Aunt May's office couch. So in every single player narrative I've enjoyed, there's usually an obvious peak for me, and this is where we hit it. This construction site fight between Martin Lee's demons and Fisk's men was an iconic Saturday morning moment for me, because I play Spider-Man on Saturday morning. I enjoyed the heck out of it, and I thought, this is what we're doing with Insomniac Spider-Man. An action-packed gang war between Mr. Negative and Wilson Fisk, which I've never experienced before in a new amazing Spider-Man game. Unfortunately, this is where things would start to turn for me, but we're getting there. Not Idris Elba was being honored for his acts of service to the city in his previous escapades with Spider-Man, and we get an introduction to his family. Even my friends who like Miles Morales agreed that this version had the charisma of a wet cardboard box. His father was a cool character though, but that honest, honorable black sidekick trope usually ends in death. But his was really impactful. We spent a very short time with him, but I felt really bad when it happened. But that whole moment was just primed and telegraphed for an assassination. This, I guess, was flipping Peter's Uncle Ben loss somewhat and adding it to Miles' origin, probably, I would assume. We also get more Peter and MJ moments, which are always welcome. But if I can complain about something story-based in this scene, although they gave it away in the trailer, but it changed here, the actual in-game Martin Lee reveal was supremely underwhelming. They should actually have gone with a trailer reveal instead. It was much better. And Miles was just a wet sock. He was just a passenger reacting all wide-eyed and confused at everything. I really don't know what his personality was on paper when they were writing the game because it's almost like he had none. Complete lack of agency. From here, things went from bad to worse for me with the introduction of Sable's laser-powered military squad. His spidey sense should have gone off there. This Sable introduction was a precursor to so many things that would be a massive problem later, and even made the gameplay worse, but we'll come back to this, I promise. So Otto Octavius predictably turned evil and turned out he was the one pulling everyone's strings after all. Shocker. Which is something we've only seen a million times. To be honest, it wasn't much of a surprise to anyone, so I hope that wasn't Insomniac's intention. The only bright spots for me from here on were the Spidey and MJ moments and Tombstone's appearance as the leader of a biker gang, although I prefer the Fisk-style more boss interpretation personally. Every time Peter and MJ were together felt fresh and fun, and you'll get no complaint from me there. That Spidey plushie on the couch made me smile, and this moment actually made me laugh out loud.
Sorry to cook and run.
Did you just leave your clothes on the kitchen floor?
That imagery of Spider-Man on MJ's window will never not look cool to me. I really dig it. There's something about Spider-Man indoors in MJ's apartment that I've liked every time I see it. I think I'll grab a screenshot and have that framed. There were a lot more poster-worthy shots to come, but I have a few more things to say about Miles. Unfortunately, he continued to annoy me beyond this point, and he really proved to me beyond reasonable doubt that he's just a worse version of Peter.
Okay, quiz time. If a pendulum is 40 meters long and attached at a 45-degree angle, how far will the pendulum fall at its lowest point?
11.72 meters. But why does that matter?
It matters a lot if you're the pendulum.
What? Oh! Wait, so you do all these equations in your head, like, while you're swinging through the city?
I have to. And so will you if you want to get good at it.
Wow, I had no idea.
I mean, he doesn't have the genius intellect or any real discernible passion that I could connect with. He knows how to fix TVs and answer crossword puzzles, but other than that, I don't know who he is. He doesn't know who he is. He just kept taking up screen time because they needed to set him up for future games. And even on those 2 points where he was displaying some level of knowledge and intelligence, that is still Peter Parker's wheelhouse. Look, I don't want to be too snarky or negative, but what really separates Miles from Peter other than his race? Moving on.
Hey, it's me. Let me know when you want to talk.
Let's detox from the negative. I have to also mention that I was on edge during this texting scene between Spider-Man and MJ. It's like we're waiting for the text replies together and I was legit on edge with him. That was excellent writing. Someone on the writing staff has really been there before. I had to mention this because whenever I think about the game, this whole scene just sticks out to me as one of the highlights.
Okay. And not okay.
So let me be a downer again. The Devil's Breath plot for me was very predictable, extremely repetitive from previous Spider-Man games, and Silver Sable needs to calm down and keep her hands to herself.
He was under your protection. You really need 2 of those?
Anyway, there was very little for me to like after this besides the individual character moments, and Miles should have really been impaled by those floorboards.
Still partners?
Always.
Hey, so I didn't know if, you wanted sparkling or flat or spring or mountain spring, so I got one of each. Am I interrupting?
And there he goes ruining moments again, acting like a CW character. Okay, now I'm just being overly negative. I'm sure people felt like he had younger brother energy towards Peter and must have enjoyed this moment. Unfortunately, I did not. And just to be clear, I did not come in with the intent of hating him. I'm always open to having my mind changed, but unfortunately Insomniac did not do it for me. I really don't want to be that guy, so I'll tone down my displeasure, but I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. It's not coming from a mean place. The only thing that was saving the third act for me, like I said, was the individual character moments. The larger story had gone off the rails for me, and it felt very familiar, unoriginal, and bloated. If this was a music album, it felt to me like going through Spider-Man's top hits. It was the first game in the Insomniac series, and they just started doing way too much. It's almost as if they thought that this was their only shot and they had to do everything in one game. We really didn't need to see the Sinister Six and all those other villains and anti-heroes in the first game. These are things you should slowly build up to through a series of games. I started getting the feeling of overkill by this point, so let me try and break it down so you can understand me better. We had Fisk, Shocker, Otto Octavius, Norman Osborn, Tombstone, Mr. Negative, Scorpion, Electro, Vulture, Rhino, and Silver Sable, all in the first game, not to mention side hints and appearances by Taskmaster, Black Cat, and Screwball. Then we get another repeat of Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man 2 with a wholesome relationship between Peter and Otto degenerating into all-out war. And Spider-Man 2 was so iconic, so whatever you do, you're inviting the comparison. If there's any overexposed Spider-Man villain across different media that is getting up there with Norman Osborn, it's Otto. That was just too predictable, but maybe that's my fault for expecting something a little more original. And as if that wasn't bad enough, by the time we wrap up the main story with an admittedly emotional and impactful, albeit unoriginal battle between Spider-Man and Otto, they decided to kill Aunt May as well. So in the first game, we have Spider-Man fighting half of his most prominent villain roster, including the Sinister Six who are already assembled, an introduction of Miles Morales, the death of Miles' father, after which Miles gains spider powers, a foreshadowing of Harry Osborn as Venom, who I hate, and killing Aunt May. Was all this really necessary to do in your first game? Anyway, by that point those were just annoyances that I could chalk up to anxiety from the Insomniac team and maybe a desire to impress on their first outing. I don't like it, but I can somewhat excuse it. What I found unforgivable was the DLC. This is where they just straight up pissed me off and lost me as a fan of the universe. You remember I mentioned Silver Sable's introduction as a precursor to some story problems? Well, we're about to get into them soon. The City That Never Sleeps DLC started well enough with the introduction of Black Cat, who had a lot of undeniable chemistry with Spider-Man. Insomniac were really nailing these relationships, and the illusion that all the characters we meet have history together. MJ would have had every reason to be concerned about their relationship. Black Cat played him through the whole story in such a believable way, and us as well, to be honest. And from what I saw online, people were really digging their pairing a lot more than him and MJ. I don't blame them either. Sparks were flying every time they were on screen together. They actually want him to dump MJ in the comment sections, and I'm inclined to agree because he has an unhealthy weakness to Black Cat's manipulation. MJ doesn't deserve that. All this was quality content and I was eating it up at this point. What really bothered me about this DLC was what they decided to do after the first chapter to two specific characters. If the DLC had just ended there, this video would be over and we'd be looking forward to the next game. But that was not the case, so let's continue. There's a tough war going on involving Hammerhead, and the first DLC ends with him seemingly blowing Black Cat to pieces. I'm sure she survived. Now, Hammerhead is one of my all-time favorite Spidey villains. I have loved him in every appearance, and I just have a thing for mafia stories and gangs in suits fighting gang wars, which I sort of alluded to in the Wilson Fisk vs Martin Lee section of the game. What I expected going in was that GTA 3, Spider-Man 2 on PS1 Mafia turf war with Italians in suits and Tommy guns. I know this is the future, but still. What I got instead was this really unappealing Sable technology laser war and Hammerhead turning himself into a cyborg. I was sure I wished on a monkey's paw at this point because there's no way you could assemble all my wildest dreams on paper and then get it all completely wrong in execution. I was playing through it the whole time thinking they had better have a way of reversing this cyborg plot. They cannot do this to Hammerhead. Well, I was wrong. This was the worst decision I could ever have imagined. They killed him. They killed Hammerhead. And even if there's a way to bring him back, he's now a gangly robot man. He's not Hammerhead anymore. He's just this thing, this weird monstrosity. I've never been mad at paying money for a DLC, but I guess it's true that there's a first time for everything. This was just horrible in so many ways. And as if they were not done rushing events in this universe, Yuri Watanabe also had her heel turn from the comics in this DLC. Like, come on Insomniac, what are we doing here? This really bummed me out, man. I've never had my hype crushed so definitively. Man, it even felt personal. I got all paranoid and started auditing my past behavior to see what I did wrong. So, once again, let's recap. In their first outing, Insomniac introduced and had Spider-Man get into conflict with Fisk, Shocker, Otto Octavius, Norman Osborn, Tombstone, Mr. Negative, Scorpion, Electro, Vulture, Rhino, and Silver Sable, not to mention side appearances by Taskmaster, Black Cat, and Screwball, then killed Aunt May, foreshadowed Harry Osborn as Venom, turned sweet lovable Yuri Watanabe from honorable cop to vengeful vigilante in a really dark turn of events, introduced Hammerhead, fake killed Black Cat, turned Hammerhead into a cyborg, and then killed him, with no regard for fans of Hammerhead.
Look how they mess with my boy.
Is that everything? I don't even know where to go from here, honestly. I don't want to be a negative Nathan or whatever, but I really have nothing positive to add after that. The story decisions really bummed me out. Look, I'll take responsibility for imposing my expectations on the game. I have no problem with accountability on that level. But I was definitely hoping for an intimate story around the Kingpin and Mr. Negative. But did everyone really enjoy what we got instead? And are you positive for the future stories that they're going to tell? Like, they nailed the character moments, but the overall story was such a mess in my opinion. And I genuinely wonder what they're planning for the sequel with Venom. A character who I actually hate as much as I hate Miles Morales. Okay, for the two people who are still here, let me get into that a bit more and say this. I think Venom and Miles Morales are genuinely the two worst things to have ever happened to Peter Parker and fans of Peter Parker. And let me explain. Whenever Spider-Man comes up now, all the vocal casuals either ask for Miles Morales or Venom, as if that's all the value that Spider-Man has as a character, and it's something I've really come to resent. Sometimes I'll watch panels on YouTube with guys and girls who have just a cursory knowledge of the topics being discussed. I won't name the channels, but a lot of them popped up and really took off during the height of the MCU. When the topic of Spider-Man comes up, just like clockwork, they'll yell out Miles or Venom. And I have to catch myself from saying something. I'm not trying to be a douchey gatekeeper, but Spider-Man is not Miles and he's not Venom. He existed for a very long time before them, and I think it's fine if you can just let Spider-Man be Spider-Man. We don't always need all this played out repetitive tropes that are just buzzwords for casual audiences. We can actually do a whole series of movies or episodes in a row with Spider-Man and his cast of characters created before 1984. And that's okay. We don't have to keep doing this gimmicky things with characters because casual audiences have heard of Venom and Miles and get excited because they can point at the screen when they appear. How many times do we need to see a new version of Spider-Man getting the symbiote and turning into Bully Maguire? Every single time there's a new Spider-Man, people ask for that.
Something must be seriously wrong. Why did I blow off my friends? MJ, Liz, and Gwen. She's always been there for us, since the 7th grade.
If you're tired of seeing Uncle Ben dying or Thomas and Martha Wayne dying, I am tired of the Venom symbiote origin. It's always the same, it's very predictable, and it is never fun for me. And yes, I am self-aware, and I know this sounds like me, but these are my complaints about the game. Well, this video went off the rails. Kinda like the Insomniac Spider-Man game, am I right? Okay, this became too negative, and it really wasn't my intention coming in. I just wanted to share what disappointed me and hopefully get alternative opinions on what everyone thought about the story of the game. Like, really thought about it, beyond the casual. It was cool, I enjoyed it. Nice game, good job, you know? If anyone is still here, please jump in the comments and give me your take on the game. And I'm 100% open to alternative opinions. What do you think I got right and where do you think I'm overreacting? Also, what are you looking forward to in the sequel? Are Miles and Venom the best thing ever? I want to hear. I'll see you in the next one, I guess, I hope, if any of you are kind enough to return. At all. Anyway, have a great day and I'll see you soon. Peace.